In today's video, I want to show you how to create a header in Divi 5. But this is not your normal header. This is going to be fully responsive and also very versatile. So let me just show you quickly what we're going to be doing. So if I scroll, you can see there the color has changed and it has also shrunk a little bit. And also, when I drag this window, you're going to notice that it is fully responsive. And when we click here on the hamburger icons, you can see that we have our drop down and pretty much we don't need to do much. So let me show you step by step how to create this from scratch. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to head over and go to our dashboard. So all this work needs to be done in the theme builder. So we're going to come all the way down here, hover over Divi, and then we're going to click on theme builder. Next, we're going to go ahead now and delete this because this is what I've just created. So go ahead and delete that. And then we're going to start from scratch by clicking on add global header. So the header we're going to create now is going to apply across the complete website. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead now and click on build global header. Now at this stage, I'm assuming that you've already created your menu and that is already ready to go. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start off with the background. So let's go ahead and give this a very light background. So I'm going to click on this section gear icon. We're going to go to background and we are going to give this a slight gray. So let's start off with white and then we're going to click inside here. And then we're just going to drag this down a little bit so that we can just see that slight gray. Okay, the reason why we do this is because we want to see where our main header actually ends as we're designing this. Okay, next we need to come over now and add a brand new row. So I'm going to click on this plus button and add a new row. Now, if you're a beginner, chances are if you saw how I did this, you are probably going to go with these two columns here, add the menu and the header on the left side and then the button on the right side. It works, but there's a lot of problems. So let's do this way. I'm going to click here. So the next items I need to add in here are our menu. And we can also add a button just below that by clicking on this plus button. So we can add social media icons. We can add a button, pretty much you can add whatever you want. Maybe it's a search bar. But in this case, let's just go for a button. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and select that. So straight away, I can see that the background of my menu here doesn't look right because it has this white color. So let's fix that by clicking on this gear icon. And then we're going to come over here to background and then we're going to click transparent. Okay, great. So far, so good. We have our two elements here and we have our button. But what we're missing here is the logo. So we're going to click here on this gear icon and then we are going to now head over to our logo. So the way we need to add our logo is not by adding it as an image because, well, that won't be clickable because ideally we want that when we click on our logo, it takes back to our home page. So we're going to click on this little icon here and we're going to set this to site logo. Great. So now that we have our site logo, as you can see, it comes in really big. Definitely, we want to make sure that we reduce the size of this. So we're going to come over here to design and then we're going to go to sizing. So here our logo has its own width. So we're just going to drag this down until we are happy with the size. So I'm going to maybe go to, let's say, maybe 12%. Okay, let's go with 12%. Next, we can see that our text here is close to the logo. Now, this is where you can decide how you're going to have this. So in my case, I'm going to go to my menu text and then I am going to now decide whether I want it centered like that or I want it all the way to the right next to the button. So this is pretty much up to you. Okay, so in my case, I think I'll have it centered. Okay, great. So now that we have these three elements in place, the next step now is to head over to our row settings. So the first thing we need to do is to remove, in fact, you know what? Let me go to my X-ray so you can see what I mean. Do you see the space that we have on the top here and then the bottom here? We don't need that. So the first thing we need to do is to head over to design. And then we're going to go to spacing. So for our padding here, we're going to set this to 0. And we're going to do the same to the top and the bottom. So you can see now that it's gone. But we have this space here between our two elements, okay? So this space here can be removed by coming over here to sizing, and then we're going to activate use custom gutter width. Next, we're going to reduce the gutter width because the gutter width is the space between, I'm sure you can see as I'm dragging it, it's the space between my modules, okay? So we want to make sure it's set to 1, okay? You can equalize column heights here, but in this case, we don't really need that. Okay, so now that we have this, you're probably asking me, okay, so how are these going to be side by side? Well, this is where it gets exciting. I'm going to click on this gear icon here, and then next I'm going to come over here to this column. So what we need now is to add our code, which we can access by coming over here to Advanced, Custom CSS, and then we're going to go to our module elements. So what we need to enter first is our display flex. Now, do you notice that straight away, this now has gone side by side, okay? Just by entering display flex. In fact, let me remove that like that. You can see that when I paste it, it now goes side by side, which is brilliant. But of course, we're not done yet. The next thing we need to do now is to make sure that we have our gap between our items. So we're going to manually add this by saying gap colon, and then I'm going to say 10 pixels and then colon. Okay, so we've just increased this little gap between our items here. Okay, but of course, we're not done yet. The next thing we need to do now is to make sure that things are pretty much not very close together here. So the next thing we need to do is to come over here, and we're going to add this command, and this is called justify content. So if we set it to space between, you're going to notice now that it has space between the items. The button is all the way on its own, and also the menu is all the way on its own. So this is where you'll also need to go in and make a few tweaks here and there to make sure everything is looking great. So in this case, my logo now has gone a bit smaller. So I'm going to go back in and make some adjustments. So I'm going to go to design, sizing. So this is where I can increase it a little bit, maybe to about 20. So these are the initial tweaks that you need to do to make sure everything is okay. All right, so now that I have space between, do you notice that we have a problem right now? This button here is all the way to the top, but everything else here is right in the middle. So we need to make sure everything is centered correctly. So what we need to do again is to go back to my row settings. We click on this column, and then we're going to go into advanced. Now we need to go back to our custom CSS module elements, and then this is where we need to add this command. And you notice that align item center has now centered my button, and pretty much everything now is centered. Okay, so let's shift our focus now to the button itself, because right now it's slightly bigger. So I want to make sure that it's a bit smaller. Next, I'm going to come over here to my design tab. We're going to go into the button, and then we're going to activate use custom styles for button. So what we need here is to go to spacing like that. And we're just going to say, perhaps let's start with 2. Okay, so I've just added 2 pixels to the top and the bottom, but perhaps maybe you may want to increase it to maybe 3 or 4. I think 4 works fine. So the button is slightly smaller. Okay, great. So as I'm looking at this now, when I go to my tablet, for example, I can see everything is looking great. And then when I go to my mobile, my button here, it doesn't look great anymore. Okay, so the question now is, how can we fix that? So there's a few decisions that you need to make here. If you want the button to show on mobile devices, you can continue on, and let's add our design. Okay, so what we need to do now is to do what is known as flex wrap. So we're going to go back in here because we want our content to wrap around all our elements. So with this selected, I'm going to go back to my column here, go to advanced, custom CSS, and then I'm also going to add my code right at the bottom here, and the code is flex wrap. So now with the wrap, it means that when I make my screen smaller, it'll just wrap, and then this will just go under. Okay, so let's do that. So you can see there everything is straight, and then there it goes under. So Again, this is where you may want to decide, do you want to have your button on the bottom or do you want to have it on the top? So if you want to have it on the top, there's one more command that you need to add over here. And this is flex direction and then column reverse. So now the button is on the top. But of course, if you want it on the right, you can further, align this to the right. But what I'm focusing right now on is just to make sure that my logo here is slightly bigger. So I'm going to go to design and then I'm going to go back to my sizing. Okay, so right now it's on 20. So we can really bump it up to about 20, perhaps maybe even 26. Okay, so that's going to be my mobile view. Okay, so far so good. I'm pretty much happy with that. And I'm happy with the size here. Okay, great. So let's save and let's see what happens when we do our first preview. So I'm going to save this and then I'm going to hit exit, save changes. And then I'm going to visit my page in a new tab like this. Okay. Wow, it's massive. We do need to go in and fix a few things. But so far so good. We have our logo here, we have our menu, and we have our button. So now when I shrink it, notice what happens. Now it's on the top. And when I click on my drop down here, you can see that my hamburger menu is working. So it's perfect. It's not behind anything. So that's great. The next thing now is to make this slightly smaller and make a few adjustments. Okay, so let's go back into our global header. So what we need to do now is to go in our section settings, and then we want to go to our design and go to spacing. So this is where we want to set our size here, perhaps maybe at around 1%. Okay, so I think that's going to work for now. We want to make sure that 1% is on the top and the bottom as well. Okay, great. So now that I have this, it's time now to let's save and see what this looks like so far. It's always a good idea to go back and forth and really see what is happening. Okay, so I think it's fine. Okay, great. Now, at this stage, you're probably thinking, well, what if I want this to stick to the top as you're scrolling off? Because right now you can see when I scroll, it goes with the page. So I want this to stick. So to achieve this, we want to click on our section settings here, and then we're going to go advanced. Next, we're going to go to scroll effects. So this is where the magic happens. You click now on this drop down because at the moment it says do not stick. So we want to make sure it sticks to the top like that. Okay. So now definitely I can see there it's stuck to the top. Now the next thing I want to do is I want this to change color as I'm scrolling. Okay, so at least I can see what is happening. To achieve that, you want to come all the way down here and then go to sticky. Okay, now that I have sticky activated, it means I can now go into my section settings, go to my background. I can set this to a really dark gray like that. Now notice what I'm doing here. I'm going to go in and do all my edits while I'm in that mode. So now I've selected my menu. I can go now to my design and let's go to our menu text. So my active link color, I want it to be this orange. And then for my menu text color, it's going to be white. So I can see it on this dark gray background. Now for my logo, I mean, this is something you can change, but for now, I'm going to show you quickly what I'm going to do. And let me just move myself out of the way here. I'm going to go into the logo itself. And you can see we have some colors here. I'm just going to invert this like that. And then I'm going to add some brightness. Now you may want to push these sliders left and right. In fact, I'm going to go all the way to the left. And now you can see that the contrast has improved on this logo. Okay, now the same applies to the button. If you want to go in and change the button colors, you can go ahead and do that. But the final thing I want to work on now is the sizing. So with my sticky selected, I'll click here on this gear icon, and then I'm going to go into my design, spacing, and then I'm just going to remove this one to 0. Okay, did you see the difference? Okay, great. So now that I have this all set, the next step now is to come over here, and then I'm going to refresh. Now let's see what happens. Now when I scroll, did you see that it went smaller? Look at that. Pretty cool, huh? So that is how you create a header in Divi 5. So now I have my sticky header, and pretty much everything is scrolling under it, and everything looks great. Okay. Now, if you are a Divi University member, you can go ahead and download this code. It's free to join. You can just go ahead, and I'll leave this in one of the posts, so you can go ahead and use the code. Or in fact, I may even just add it in the video description below. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think. If you haven't purchased Divi yet, I'll leave a link to that in the video description below, and also be a part of the community on diviuniversity.com. This is a community of fellow designers who want to design awesome looking websites with Divi. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.